Welcome back to page 121. Today we're going to take a look at the next in the series, The Gods of Greyhawk, from Dragon number 68, Deities, Demigods of Greyhawk by Gary Gygax. This went on for 3 or 4 columns from Gygax, and then we got some offerings from other Deities of Greyhawk by Len the Kafka and a few other people, so I'm going to be taking a look at those as well in this series. So what these gods brought to the table was a set of deities that was actually just for the Greyhawk campaign. And there's one in this issue in particular that had a deep impact on my campaign, and I'll discuss which deity it is as I get into this. I'm also going to make a slight correction to something I did in my last video about deities from Dragon 67. I forgot to read what their skills were as far as, what level fighter, what level magic user, what level assassin some of these guys were. I'm going to cure that now, and I'll do that going forward. So a little bit of a revisit to my previous video, and then the brand new one today on page 121. Today we'll be talking about the Deities and Demigods of Greyhawk from Dragon 68. But before I do that, we're going to take a look at 67 and make some corrections, or just a slight oversight on my part about the deities in this one. Let me find the article. There we go. I realized after I'd made the article or made the video that I never touched on what the portfolios were of these deities as far as their powers and abilities. I talked about their portfolios rather, but as far as their powers and abilities in the D&D setting. So for instance, Hieronius would have the powers of a 17th level paladin, a 12th level ranger. And I don't use psionics in my campaign, so I won't really be talking about that. Hextor, for his part, would be using a 16th level fighter, 12th level assassin. That would be how you would have him appear in the encounter, those skills. Ayuz would be coming in as a 16th level cleric and a 16th level assassin. I think it's interesting that Ayuz has no magic use skill listed there. And then St. Cuthbert would be coming in as a 22nd level cleric, 8th level druid, and a 7th level monk. So just an interesting thing. I'm sorry I overlooked it in the last one. I'll try not to in the future ones. So now we're going to go to today's bread and butter, which is going to be the Deities Demigods brought out in this issue of the Dragon. All right, here we go. Deities Demigods of the World of Greyhawk by E. Gary Gygax. This is the second edition of this. It's a little deeper in the magazine than the first one was. This is starting on page 63. And the very first deity brought forth is Celestion. His portfolio is stars, space, and wandering. He is a lesser god. Armor class -5, 90% magic resistance. His alignment is neutral good. His worshipper's alignment is good. It's interesting because I would have expected a Celestian type deity to be kind of a at distance, aloof kind of god that might be neutral, but I like that Celestian's neutral good. His skills are 4th level cleric, 15th level ranger, 14th level magic user. Again, and I ignore psionics, so sorry, whatever his psionics there, I don't pay attention to. Again, this was 1982, and power creep was in D&D, but it wasn't really very big right now, and the game itself kind of topped out around 12th level. So with the game topping out around 12th level, with this guy having 15th level ranger and 14th level magic user powers, that's pretty powerful. We, of course, would have to bump these now for anything in our current game. And keep in mind, too, I consider these avatars, not the true god themselves, just what they would have appear in our prime material plane. So coming over to here, we got a good look at what he himself can do. And then we come down to the 7 orders of priesthood of Celestion, which is pretty darned interesting. And with each level in the order, you get a spell that's a bonus to your spells in addition to what you get for the rest of the day. And you get each spell as you go up in level, so it's cumulative. So for instance, your first order spell, which you would have of clerics levels 1 and 2, they would get a feather fall. Second order for levels 3 and 4 would get a jump. Third order for levels 5 and 6 would get levitate. Fourth order, levels 7 and 8 would get spider climb. Fifth order, levels 9 and 10 would get fly. Sixth order, levels 11 through 15 would get dimension door. and 7th order, level 16 and up, would get a teleport. So that's actually quite a bit of power to add to the character as it grows, and even as it gets to be higher level. I like that. I like personalizing the godhood to your clergy and gaining some bonuses for following a specific god. So the next one we come to is for Largan. And I realize there are a couple of different ways to say this name. We've just said for Largan. I know it could be Falagan and a couple other pronunciations, but for Largan is what we've used, and that's what I'm used to. He is the god of horizons, distances, roads, and travel. This guy sees quite a bit of use in our campaign, both as NPC, clerics, and player characters choosing him as their deity. I've had a number of deities or clerics of Largan in my campaign. He is armor class -6, 80% MR, which is pretty significant. His alignment is neutral, and Worshipper's alignment can be any, but he prefers neutral. And then we come down to his powers. He is a 9th level cleric / 9th level druid, a 9th level magic user / 9th level illusionist, and a 20th level thief. So this guy's got some power to him. He is a lesser god. And it's interesting, the Shoes of Falagan in the Unearthed Arcana are obviously named for him, and a much sought after magic item in my campaign. In fact, I did a game where we went, the players went on a minor quest to obtain a pair. It goes in here of all his spells and things like that. He can summon elementals, what he is, what his personality would be like. Can only be hit by +3 or greater weapons. He's never surprised upon the prime material plane, which is pretty cool. The Priesthood of Falagan is of 2 sorts, urban and pastoral, and I do make my cleric player characters, players, declare which they are. The urban one wear brown robes and are generally found in small chapels and communities. Urban clerics gain the ability of Pass Wall at 7th level. Those of the pastoral order wear green robes and minister by way of traveling highways and byways, occasionally stopping at wayside shrines to Falagan. Pastoral clerics of Falagan gain the ability of Pass Plant at 5th level. So it's pretty interesting that you do gain a couple of spells. Obviously, Celestion gives more powers and continues across the growth of the character, but Falagan is still a very interesting deity for a player character to follow. Next we go to Ilona, or Ilana, depending on how you say it. For whatever reason, it should be Ilana. For whatever reason, in my campaign, we started calling her Ilona, and it's just stick. So, Ilona for me. She is the goddess of the forest, meadows, animals, flowers, and fertility. I said there was one deity in here that had a special place in my campaign, and this is it. Ilona gets picked a lot in our campaign to be worshipped by clerics and by druids, which absolutely I allow, and rangers. She's a very common deity in our campaign. She is armor class -6, 75% MR. Her alignment is neutral good, and her worshipper's alignment is neutral good or any any neutral. Her symbol is the unicorn horn. She has 11th level druid spells, 12th level ranger, 10th level magic user spells. Now, again, I think that's a little modest for the avatar of a deity, but this was 1982, December of 82, in fact. So we come over to here to her portfolio, and it talks about how she is for the common folk, for anyone in forests or meadows, anyone working with those, with animals, things like that. Brownies, elves, gnomes, and halflings are especially attuned to her, which is pretty cool, and I've used that in many campaigns. Clerics of Ilona are able to track as if they were rangers at an equal level of experience. At the time this was written, that really didn't mean a ton. There was a Dragon article about that, but when Unearthed Arcana came out, we got the ranger ability to track by level. And they gain, at 5th level, animal friendship. This in addition to their normal spells. Worship of Ilona is centered in the Wild Coast to Ulick Fiefs, the Cron Hills to the sea. So it's not a widespread one, although it's more widespread in my Greyhawk campaign, simply because she's so popular amongst me and my player characters. My players. I say player characters. Our next one up is Fultis of the Blinding Light. Light, resolution, law, order, inflexibility, the sun and the moon. That's his portfolio. Fultis hasn't proven real popular in our campaign. I have used Clerics of Fultis to good effect as good guys / bad guys. So overzealous good guys who end up taking the role of the opposition in a game or two. Fultis, the Lesser God, armor class -5, 85% MR. He's lawful good / neutral. His worshiper's alignment is lawful, lawful evil, or lawful good. So you can see Fultis with the inflexibility part of his portfolio can run a wide range of reasons to oppose your party. He is from Arcadia. His cleric level is 20, 12th level illusionist. So he's pretty powerful. I like Fultis as a foil for my players. Anybody that came to me and said, hey, I want to have a cleric of Fultis, I'd say, great, I don't care. Even a lawful evil cleric of Fultis, which would be kind of interesting. But I have not had any of my players come to me with that yet. For Fultis, for worshiping him, the clerics of Fultis continually seek to reveal the light to unbelievers. They brook no argument because they are inflexible. They are shown in the way of the blinding light. There are 3 ranks of the priesthood, which is glimmering, levels 1 through 4. They get Dispel Darkness as a special spell, and it's brought out here. Dispel Darkness is brought up as a power of Fultis, but you get it as one of his clerics. At levels 5 through 8, you are of the Gleaming, and you get a special, you get Silver Vestments, Glow, as the special spell. Shining, clerics of level 9 and above are they gain Reflect as again above as a special spell. These are in addition to regular spells. So Fultis's clergy gets some powers, but they're all directly from their deity itself. Also in this article, we got a nice recap of standard divine abilities. I actually copied this page because it's all nice and tight right here, and I carry this around in my Dungeon Master Guide. So I always have this handy for my higher level games. It doesn't come up as much as it had at one time. I don't use any kind of avatars a bunch in my game anymore. But back in the day, of course, like everybody else, I did. And here we go. The last deity brought out in this particular issue is Tritharian the Summoner. His portfolio is individuality, self-protection, liberty, and retribution. Armor class -4, 80% MR. He is chaotic good. His worshippers are chaotic neutral, chaotic good. And he is from Gladsheim. He's a 9th level cleric, 11th level fighter, 10th level illusionist. Tritherian has not seen a bunch of interest in our campaign. It's just somebody that we never really got that excited about. I really don't know why. A lot of my players have read these articles and are certainly familiar with the deities between the Greyhawk hardback and me. They've heard about a lot of this stuff, but this guy's never proven very popular. Priests of Tritharian get tracking as a ranger 1 level below your cleric level to a maximum of 8th level. And those are 4th level or higher. Those clerics are 4th level or higher permitted the use of spears. And at 8th and higher, they can use broadswords. So this is one of the early times, too, that we see somebody actually following their deity in the use of weaponry. And it's something I've embraced completely. I really feel that adds a lot to it. You don't seem to get any powers, any other spells for being a follower of Tritharian. So presumably, back in 1982, those 2 little abilities, those 3 abilities, were thought to be enough. And that is it. Now, one other thing I want to say before I go today is this issue of Dragon also brought us weather in the world of Greyhawk. This would go on to the box set in '83 and would also be part of the Wilderness Survival Guide. This was a very useful article back in the day, and I used it a bunch. Continue to use the weather from Wilderness Survival Guide to this day. And then we get some nice water encounter things. There was one other article in here I wanted to take a quick look at because this impacted my campaign. Be a Two-Fisted Fighter by Roger Moore. We adopted this very quickly, and I still use it to this day. Based on your dexterity, you may fight with a one-handed weapon in one hand and a smaller weapon in the other. So something like a long sword and a short sword, long sword and a dagger. Very common in our campaign for players to have that. Going up through your dexterities, 18 through 20, your primary hand would be no penalty. Your secondary hand would be -1. We do use this article. In fact, I gave copies of this article to my players, so they had a reference for it. And I put this in pretty much when this issue was published. Been using it now since December of 82, and have had no problems with it. So I do recommend it. Being a two-fisted fighter, there's the chart. I do recommend it just because it adds a lot more versatility and life to your party. Don't worry, there are plenty of fighters that are still going to choose sword and board, or going to have a dexterity so low they're not going to have much choice. And then, of course, there's a nice little ad here for the Traveler book for Traveler. So there we have it, Dragon 68, look at Deities, Demigods. I'm going to continue the series with the next installment from Gary Gygax. And until then, I hope you like what you heard and saw. If you did, please like and subscribe, tell your friends, and I'll see you next time on page 121.